This item is scheduled from 7:30 to 8:30. We have a half hour of public comment on this item. And this item is a resolution regarding adult personal use and personal possession of ethnogenic psychoactive plants and fungi. To provide the viewers with some background, on November 10th, 2019, the City Council, by motion, directed the Public Safety Committee to review the resolution declaring that the investigation and arrest of individuals involved with the adult possession, use, or cultivation of psychoactive plants and fungi listed on the federal Schedule I list for personal adult use and clinical research be amongst the lowest priorities for the City of Santa Cruz. On December 2nd, 2019, Public Safety Committee accepted public comment on the proposed resolution. The committee referred the resolution for further edits to Councilmember Myers and to bring a revised version back to Council at the next available City Council meeting. The resolution was edited after further review of the City of Denver resolution and the City of Oakland ordinance, and in response to clarification for Santa Cruz Police Department about the resolution's intent. The revised ordinance is provided for City Council action. The resolution was also revised to recognize the need for harm reduction and education for youth and families about drug prevention. Are there any questions from our fellow council members at this time on this item? Seeing none, there was an individual, Dr. Ali Fiducia from MAPS, who has 4 minutes for public comment. If any of the member of the public would like to comment on this item, I'd ask that you please line up to my left, and you will be given, unless you contacted the city in advance, you will be given 2 minutes. And as I mentioned before, we will have half an hour of public comment on this item. And given that we're starting a little bit late, public comment will end at 8:10. So I'd like to invite up Dr. Ali Fiducia from MAPS for 4 minutes.
Hi, good evening. I'm Ali Fiducia, and I've recently just taken a new position at Project New Day, which is a locally founded nonprofit foundation that's going to be focusing on using psychedelics to treat addiction and other mental health disorders. And I'm a neuropharmacologist, and I've been studying psychedelics and MDMA-assisted psychotherapy since 2004, and other substance use disorders as well. And what I can say about these substances is that they're not addictive. We have a lot of research, not only from the current clinical trials that are happening across many universities in the United States, but also from the historical use. Indigenous people have been using psychoactive plants and fungi for thousands of years. And there are also churches now that allow the use in sacramental context for ayahuasca in Brazil, as well as some churches here in the U.S. So we have a good understanding of when these substances are taken with careful preparation and with good intention, that they can be safely taken within a community setting. And I think there is reason to have caution around over-medicalizing psychedelics. I think there will be a place for that for people that have diagnosed mental health conditions to go and have a course of treatment. But these treatments are going to be quite expensive. You know, I've heard anywhere in the neighborhood of $10,000 to $30,000 for one course of treatment. And so really we have an opportunity here in the community for people to be seeking out these experiences and using them to help promote their own health and well-being, as well to help them overcome PTSD, substance use disorders. There's also research going on now into the neuroregenerative effects of psilocybin. And so there's clinical trials now looking at if this could be a compound that's useful for Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's. And so really, we don't even know the full potential yet. But what we do know is that the safety profile is good for when taken with good consideration. And I can say at MAPS, you know, before this phase 3 study even started a few months ago, that there was over 20,000 people on a wait list. I think that number is much higher now. Here, that we have a whole website just trying to collect the interest of people that are seeking this treatment. and the FDA did just pass expanded access, but only for 50 people. So with that, we have the potential here to really help promote the education, the safe use. I did see in the resolution that it's recommended that this would be under supervision with trained medical providers. However, this isn't feasible at this time because the licensing boards that oversee mental health professionals are not caught up to speed yet with what is happening with the research or how to have oversight over people that may be overseeing these type of experiences for people. So I think there is some change in that text that could be in consultation with trained people. And there's other people that could go through training to be able to help people adequately understand what the contraindicated medical conditions may be or contraindicated medications, because that is an important factor too for the safety. And with that, we're going to be doing a lot of work with Project New Day here in the community to help promote education and harm reduction, as well as wherever we can, as this moves forward, to help people actually receive treatments with psychedelic substances as a way for forming community groups for people during aftercare. So not even necessarily during the experiences of psychedelics, but after. There's a lot of research that's known that you can help promote long-term recovery by having a supportive community around and just freedom to be able to talk and discuss what's coming up with people.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you for your time.
All right, thank you very much. Next week, representatives from Decriminalizes Santa Cruz reached out as well for 4 minutes, so you'll have up to 4 minutes should you need that full time. You can also split that time with other members, but just to let you know, you have up to 4 minutes.
All right, hello Santa Cruz City Council. My name is Sean Cutler. I am the co-founder of Decriminalizes Santa Cruz along with Julian Hodge, and I am an officer in UC Santa Cruz Students for Sensible Drug Policy. Santa Cruz City Council must pass the resolution decriminalizing personal usage, possession, and importantly, cultivation of entheogenic plants and fungi because the drug war is immoral. I also say that we absolutely need to have the word cultivation placed back into the third line of the first, therefore be it resolved, for reasons of respecting indigenous practices and for allowing people to peacefully develop relationships with these plants in their own homes. I think it is extremely important that we put that one word, cultivation, back into the resolution, because we love all of the edits, but we would really like the word cultivation to be placed back into the third line of the first, therefore be it resolved. Additionally, the war on drugs is a war on us. The war on drugs was not created to preserve public safety, public health, or to protect children. Rather, it was created intentionally to imprison minorities, peace activists, and imprison those who opposed the United States military-industrial complex. In the 1960s, as drugs became symbols of youthful rebellion, social upheaval, and political dissent, the government halted scientific research to evaluate their medical safety and efficacy. In June 1971, President Nixon declared a war on drugs. He dramatically increased the size and presence of federal drug control agencies and pushed through measures such as mandatory sentencing and no-knock warrants. A top Nixon aide, John Ehrlichman, later admitted the following: "You want to know what this was really all about? The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. We knew we could not make it illegal to be either against the war or illegal to be black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did." I'd also like to add that Portugal in 2001 decriminalized all drugs, and the number of people, and in Portugal, the number of people voluntarily entering treatment has increased significantly. Incarceration for drug-related offenses has decreased, and rates of problematic drug use have fallen. So in a moment when the United States is facing an overdose crisis, learning from Portugal's accomplishments is especially timely and valuable. Thank you, City Council.
I have the last minute.
Is there a minute left on your time?
There's a minute left.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
All right, thank you.
There's 1 minute left on their time. Oh, okay.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I'm Julian Hodge. I'm one of the co-founders of Decriminalize Santa Cruz. I'm also the president of Students for Sensible Drug Policy up at UC Santa Cruz. We're currently the #1 ranked chapter in the world with Students for Sensible Drug Policy. I am so glad to be here today. My 8 months working on this resolution, I've met so many amazing people with amazing stories about how entheogenic plants and fungi have saved their lives. And as organizations like MAPS work to increase access to those who need it, we look to our city council in the meantime to help us. I want to thank the members of City Council that helped make this resolution a reality. And of course, please add the cultivation back into the resolution. But thank you for working on this.
This time we're going to open up the public comment.
We still have several organizations that would like to speak.
I'm sorry, I only had Decrim as one, Dr. Ali Fiducia from MAPS as one, and there was a representative. I'm not sure if they came tonight from Veterans. Okay. So if the representative from Veterans would like to come up, you will also have 4 minutes. But I'm sorry.
We have written down on that public comment list the order.
I understand, but I understand. Let me explain myself, please. Okay, thank you. So the representative from the Veterans can come forward. You'll have up to 4 minutes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight. Everyone can take a moment and think about where you were on your 19th birthday. For me, that was easy. I was on flight from Fort Carson, Colorado to Kunar Province, Afghanistan. During my 2 tours in Afghanistan, I was in roughly 180 firefights, 3 explosions, lost friends, saw innocent Afghani civilians dead. The transition back home from Afghanistan was difficult for me. I was prescribed initially Percocet painkillers for pain in some of the injuries that I sustained. When my prescription ended, I was still in both physical and emotional pain, so I started seeking out opiates on my own. I was in and out of multiple different rehabs, inpatient, outpatient. I tried physical therapy, counseling. I was in psych wards. I was suicidal. And eventually I tried psychedelic assisted therapy, which I'll talk more on in a moment. April 13th, 2019, my best friend decided to take his life. Immediately following his suicide, a lot of my repressed PTSD resurfaced. I was getting panic attacks very, very frequently, to the point where it felt like I was having a heart attack, having to go to the hospital multiple times a week. My experience with psychedelic assisted therapy kind of happened upon chance. In some of the psychedelic assisted therapy sessions, it really let me dive back into some of the traumas. Like I was getting to revisit them like a movie playing before me, like a movie of my life, and just watch some of the events unfold before me and kind of question, like, how could I have reacted differently? What would I have done? And the answer to a lot of those questions were the same thing, and kind of figuring out, like, I didn't necessarily do anything wrong, and it was just presented like life had dealt me a kind of messed up hand. And that made it a lot easier to let go of some of that extra baggage that I was holding on to. This leads me to working with Project New Day and getting to participate in group sessions and community meetings and helping other individuals. So I think there's a huge potential to what this decriminalization of a plant-based medicine has the potential to help the society. So thank you so much.
Okay, we're going to open it up to public comment. Each person will have 2 minutes. And just to be clear, because this item has come before the City Council previously, it's also gone to the Public Safety Committee for more input, and now it's coming back for its last hearing. This, we're only allowing half an hour of public comment. So public comment, regardless if you're in line, will end at 8:10. And I just want that to be clear. Okay, so you may start.
Hi there. Athonia Capelli. Hello, Mayor Cummings. Welcome. So I'm going to go pretty fast here. So I actually brought some, I'm hoping this will show up on camera because I'm going to be using some kind of larger words here, and I want them to be clear. So I'm here today to urge City Council to lead the country in demolishing the failed war on drugs by decriminalizing Schedule I psychedelics, otherwise known as entheogenic plants. We need to do these 3 things: decriminalize possession, decriminalize cultivation, and decriminalize consumption. My fellow activists envision these philosophies. We aim to reduce arrests carried out under the inhumane war on drugs. Further, we need to commute the sentences for nonviolent psychedelic drug use. We must demand equitable access to psychedelic plants to make sure disenfranchised communities can seek healing and will not be left out. We need to empower individuals to have access to their own medicines, thereby reducing their dependence on the pharmaceutical industry. Decriminalize fungi and open paths to those seeking to stimulate creativity and ingenuity by way of microdosing. We encourage those seeking to use psychedelics to GGG, grow, gather, and gift. We encourage activists to work with city councils in forward-thinking cities such as Minneapolis, Seattle, Portland, San Jose, Chicago, New York, and LA, and enact decriminalization now. We urge our California lawmakers to rise to the challenge and decriminalize psychedelics throughout the state in 2020.
I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna please ask that you all hold your applause. The longer you applaud, the less time there are for people to speak. And so please continue.
Sorry, that was my fault. Okay, this measure that you all have worked on so hard for the last 8 months will give those struggling with depression and mental anguish the peace of mind to seek out psychedelic treatment.
Sorry, your time is, I'm gonna cut your time.
When other methods are proven to be ineffective. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, next member.
Hi, my name is Tyler Lewis. I'm a resident of Santa Cruz. For those of you who were not present or don't know, I testified before the Public Safety Committee. I'm here in support of decriminalizing plant and fungal entheogens. I can speak from personal experience that my experience with psilocybin mushrooms changed my life in an extremely profound way. I've spent more of my life in therapy than I haven't. I suffered from major depressive disorder, from generalized anxiety disorder, and I've also suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. I tried normal talk therapy, and I wasn't having success with that. I tried group therapy, and that didn't work. I tried SSRIs, like Prozac, and that didn't work either. But after I had my first experience with psilocybin, I experienced so much symptom relief that it was like I finally found the healing that I had been looking for the entire time. Like I told the committee before, the Public Safety Committee, I used to be addicted to cigarettes or nicotine. I used to be addicted to alcohol. But through my experience, I was able to use that as a way to reflect on all of my bad habits and the way I was treating my body and the way I saw myself, you know, with respect to my society, but just how I treat my own body. And I was able to kick the habit of nicotine addiction. I no longer abuse alcohol. I have a much more healthy relationship with other drugs and medicines. And I know that some people are worried about the safety profile or the potential for abuse, but I know that the potential for abuse is very low, especially when you compare it with drugs that are legally available on Pacific Avenue, like alcohol and tobacco or SSRIs. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hola, hello again. Before I begin my comment, before the clock starts, procedural question about time. I heard the mayor said we would not be given more than 2 minutes unless we had prior consent of the board. You had just said that. Is that true of the 3 minutes that I'm entitled to, or am my rights still going to be respected? I would like to. It's just a question. I would like to know if I'm going to get 3 minutes.
I'll give you 3 minutes on this one.
No, you're not going to give me. It is my right as a person with a disability. Because, and I'm pointing this out because you have a problem with representation. Obviously, you are you don't give us 30 minutes. We are going to take 30 minutes of the time that we put you here to listen to. Okay, sounds good. I don't speak for any tribe. I am Criollo. I'm a white mixed Mexican. And in UC Santa Cruz, it's my 5th year. I have a disability. Reading's hard for me. But certain things are not hard for me to read. I'm going to lay it down for you in a couple words. I have a very, very simple comment to make that you guys have been hearing over and over again, and I'm going to synthesize it in a couple sentences. You, the city of Santa Cruz, California, do not have the authority to regulate a native plant on its native soil. You do not have the authority to regulate native people on their land. Why do you think your homes continue to rise in value? I'm an economist. Why do you think your homes have value? Because the people that were once here, the people that were raped and colonized and killed off this native land that you now want to regulate, took care of this land and took care of the people, every person on this land, like you guys can't seem to do with your homeless friends that don't have a roof over their heads. I would ask for empathy and representation. And actually, I'm not going to ask for it, I'm going to take it because it is mine and it was always mine to begin with. I have one last thing to say. That was the bulk of the argument. You've heard it over and over and over again, and it is the truth. It's painful. It's painful to see how we've forgotten where we come from and who we are. Mr. Cummings, you're a black man denying representation to Native peoples on their land and trying to regulate what they can and can't consume on their land. I can assure, these people know more about these plants than we have ever discovered. They know more about these lands and these hills than we have discovered. Respect my mommies. My indigenous mommies, they were strong people. Their memory lives on. They have not died themselves. They are hanging on. Are you going, what role are you going to have in this? Make the conscious choice and don't decriminalize something. Simply stop criminalizing people doing native things on the native land. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next speaker.
Hello, my name is Grace Seppi, and I believe that decriminalizing entheogens would be greatly beneficial to the health and liberty for the people of Santa Cruz. Since I was 13, I've been in and out of intensive psychiatric programs for severe PTSD, alcohol and substance abuse, and a previous suicide attempt. I was prescribed a cocktail of psychotropic medications such as antidepressants, anti-anxiety, antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, and sleeping pills. Because of psychedelic medicine, I am glad to say I'm happy, healthy, and thriving. When I was 19, I took my first therapeutic dose of psilocybin mushrooms. Initially, my psychedelic experience was incredibly difficult, but healing is not supposed to be fun or easy. As my challenging experience was reaching its climax, a friend implanted the seed of hope for a prosperous life. My life shifted from an all-consuming existential despair to an open-minded existential curiosity. Psilocybin mushrooms and love saved my life that day. It has been 4 years since my psilocybin journey and 4 years since I've needed any psychiatric medication. In 2017, I attended the Psychedelic Science Conference in Oakland, and I discovered the research that supported my healing experience with entheogens. Since then, I have dedicated my life to psychedelic science. Last June, I graduated cum laude from UC Santa Cruz with my bachelor's in psychology, and I plan to pursue my doctorate in clinical psychology to research, practice, and profess on the healing potential of entheogenic medicines. The war on drugs has been a failure that has ruined lives, filled prisons, and cost an unnecessary fortune. As a constituent of Santa Cruz, I ask my city council to decriminalize entheogenic plants and fungi for adult personal use, possession, and cultivation. I emphasize the word cultivation to be put back in the resolution so that every community member can pursue their own personal development with the protection of the law. With the passing of this resolution, Santa Cruz will be the second city to support our human rights to cognitive liberty and the pursuit of happiness. And I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tal. My name is Kelly McCormick, and I came here as a PhD. I have a PhD in cognitive science, so I came here mostly to underscore the points being made by other people that we really do have increasing evidence that entheogens are not drugs of addiction, and on the contrary, they are extremely powerful tools helping people recover from addiction, as well as anxiety and intractable depression. So these are things that have a huge potential to heal individuals and, I believe, society. And in decriminalizing or ideally legalizing these things, we would be giving people tools to heal and really pursue their happiness and their best selves. The only people I can think of who would not benefit from increased access would be the pharmaceutical companies, because a lot of these treatments work after a single treatment. So things like addiction and end-of-life anxiety can resolve with a single treatment of some of these entheogens. That's it.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much.
Before you begin, for those of you who have signs in the audience, please lower them so that you're not blocking the view of people behind you, because everybody would like to see. Thank you. I appreciate it. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is William Goss. I'm a resident of the city of Santa Cruz and lived in the county for over 6 years. I'm the mycology director of the California Psilocybin Decriminalization Initiative 2020 campaign. I'm also a mycology graduate of UC Davis, a Santa Cruz mountain naturalist and outdoor educator, member of the Santa Cruz Fungus Federation, a grower supervisor with years of industry experience at the continent's largest organic mushroom production facility, and I teach mushroom cultivation classes here in Santa Cruz and around Northern California. I'm here to support the decriminalization nature resolution with the addition of cultivation. During my time at Monterey Mushrooms, I authored dozens of standard operating procedures on the food-safe, efficient, and sustainable cultivation of fungi. It's easy and simple and straightforward. Dosage of mushroom and plant medicine can and should cost pennies, the same as the portobellos I was growing with Monterey Mushrooms, to make them available to everyone who wants it. With the addition of cultivation to the resolution, we will avoid a black market and with potentially unsafe products and an inaccessible privatized medical system that patents natural products, making them more expensive for people who need it most. At the end of the day, we need to ask ourselves, should anyone go to jail for plants or mushrooms? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jackie Orman. I'm a student at University of Santa Cruz and a member of Students for Sensible Drug Policy. So the decriminalization of entheogenic plants and fungi would be a huge step forward for healing many illnesses, even those that could be life-threatening, such as depression and addiction. This could save lives like it did mine and make it incredibly safer for people to heal and substantially improve their quality of life. Additionally, in regard to safety, I would much appreciate it if the word cultivation be placed back into the resolution to ensure personal cultivation is explicitly decriminalized, which would promote a safe way of having the entheogenic plants and or fungi for oneself. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Before I commence, I would like to ask a point of procedure. Is it possible, since I was originally told that as a member, as if I'm representing an organization, I would get 4 minutes, may I get 3.5? No.
Unfortunately, groups who requested more time had to request that time in advance. Those groups reached out to me 2 days ago for more time, and so I apologize, but I can't give you more time. So you can have 2 minutes. Yep, you have 2 minutes.
2 minutes away. I'm Kathleen Purcell, Vice Chair of the Libertarian Party of Santa Cruz County, which has endorsed this resolution, along with the word cultivation being placed back into the fourth line of the resolution to ensure that personal cultivation is explicitly decriminalized. Libertarian Party is based on the principle of non-aggression. Intrinsic to this is compassion and humanitarianism, both of which are relevant to this resolution. If your perception of libertarianism differs from this, you may have understandably been the victim of a misinformation campaign designed specifically by big money interests who want to undermine your individual liberty while they retain or increase their power and control. If this is the case, I recommend you go directly to the source, that is, Google the Libertarian Party itself, rather than defer to second-party narratives that erroneously define it. Libertarians do not believe that crimes that have no victim, that is, so-called victimless crimes, should be considered crimes. However, for the sake of argument, let's assume that one comes from the other perspective. That is, if an activity causes anyone any kind of harm, it should be a crime. So in the interest of determining if there is any harm from using plant-based entheogens, I'll quote what our own federal government says. This is from the National Institutes of Health, NIH.gov, the National Center of Biotechnology Information, which comes from the U.S. National Library of Medicine, after many controlled studies over many years, concludes that classic serotonergic psychedelics are not known to cause damage to the brain or other organs of the body, or cause withdrawal symptoms, elicit addiction, or compulsive use, or cause birth defects or genetic damage. I'm not going to go through all of these since I have a limited time. I've already spoken to this public safety committee on this. So I have these iterated here. There is absolutely no harm. I will quote again the NIH conclusion. We did not find use of psychedelics as being an independent risk factor for mental health problems. So the obvious takeaway is that if there is no harm, there has been no crime. We must decriminalize.
Thank you.
Hi. So there's not much I could come up here and say that can't be said better by any of these people, but yeah, so we know that these molecules, these substances are like safe, especially when compared to legal things like alcohol or like a lot of pharmaceuticals. And it's important that these are decriminalized because the criminalization of these substances goes against our human right to interface with nature. And I also believe it's really important to add the word cultivation back into the bill because that is another part of our human right to be able to do this. And I can cede the rest of my time to whoever needs it.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, and I'm Valerie Corral, and I'm not speaking on behalf of WHAM, but I am one of the co-founders of WHAM. And over the 27 years of our work in this community, we have represented access to whole plant medicines. And they are not limited, of course. It is our duty and our obligation to renew our relationship with nature and to remember that we are in service of not only one another, but we are in part of a bigger and much more complex aspect. So in the division of us and nature, there's a problem. And I want to speak specifically, so much has been said tonight, and I need not echo it, but in the mid-90s, when we were writing Prop 215, there was a massive standoff around cultivation. And so for 2 months, I fought to bring cultivation into Prop 215. The reason being is that if we do not have our hands on personal access, we defer the control to others. We defer it to our dealers, we defer it to the pharmaceutical industry, we defer it to the corporate state who will provide it to us, and we're struggling with new laws around cannabis that we want to look at. That we've already gone through this. We want to look at how it has affected our communities and our access to providing simple and complete medicines that take it out of the hands of those who would otherwise control it and allow direct access. So I speak truly and completely to the support of cultivation, because I think it is necessary. So look to Prop 215.
Thank you. Before you begin, I just want to point out that it's 8:10 and we were supposed to be done by now. However, I want to look in line just to see you gentleman in the hat who's speaking. Gentleman in the hat. Are you planning on speaking on this item? No. Is there anybody who's currently standing in that line who's planning on speaking on this item? 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll give each of you 1 minute just so that we can speed this time up. So please.
Hello, City Council. My name is Justice Earl. I'm a lifelong resident of Santa Cruz, a UCSC graduate in the sciences and a technology entrepreneur. I was 6 years old the first time I got a bloody nose from my mom. This time it was for hiding my homework, as I didn't have anyone at home to help me with it, including my dad, who was drinking or absent for most of my childhood. This environment of abuse and neglect caused complex PTSD that led to depression and anxiety in adult life that I've been managing for 17 years with no help from Western medicine. As a startup founder, I could not yet afford healthcare, though even when I had health insurance, the answer to my condition was addictive chemicals and with worse side effects than I started with, such as suicide, a risk I was unwilling to take. I studied these naturally occurring plant medicines diligently for over a year to ensure that the science behind them was as safe and accurate as reported. In my studies, I discovered a medical journal that published that alcohol was the most harmful drug, more so than heroin or crack, and yet found, I think my time was cut in half.
Yeah, we reduced everybody's to a minute because we were going to stop at 8:10, and we've given everybody else.
Oh, I thought it was right after me.
Yeah.
No problem, no problem. Psychedelics have greatly helped alleviate my depression. Thank you.
Thank you for accommodating extra time for everyone. I really appreciate that.
And can I pause you for 1 sec? I'm going to remind people in the audience, if you have signs, please keep them low so that you're not blocking the vision of the people behind you. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Ellie Black. I'm a lifetime Santa Cruz native. It is absolutely imperative that the word cultivation be placed back into the resolution to ensure personal cultivation is explicitly decriminalized. Without this word, much of the power and purpose of this resolution is diminished, essentially forcing those seeking healing to resort back to acquiring the substances via illegal or unsafe avenues, likely putting money and profit back into the equation, and further perpetuating the very stigmatization and persecution this resolution is seeking to eliminate. Failure to decriminalize personal cultivation could have the unintended consequence of an influx of individuals coming to our area to provide the substances we are not allowed to provide for ourselves. Those individuals were profit-driven, not motivated by health or safety. We could not be assured that these substances are pure, authentic, and free of any number of dangerous additives. Thank you.
Hi, Pat Malo. It's been a real pleasure working with all of you and everyone in the room on this issue. It's It's one of the reasons I'm proud to be from Santa Cruz and, still be lucky enough to remain here. Since I only have a minute, I want to talk about one thing in particular, and it's been, on all of our discussions, and that's how we do some sort of educational campaign for safe use and particularly prevention for youth access. And I do cannabis politics. I've been blessed to participate in the, youth access prevention, campaigns and best practices with the cannabis industry. It's been instrumental into, being able to be out in the open and have these discussions. To include this piece, I think that it's a good idea to reach out to organizations like Community Prevention Partners that I'm a part of and other organizations in the room, and maybe come back in 6 months with some sort of safe use prevention strategy and personal cultivation, of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is William Sump, and plant medicine has saved my life. At a dark point in my life, a friend brought me to a Shipibo-style ceremony, and that process planted the seed of love in my heart, reconnected me with my son and those around me. And so I just want to thank all of you here tonight for your leadership in helping to guide the community to this resolution.
Thank you.
Thanks for the extra time. I just wanted to say, as a resident, as a husband, and as a father of a beautiful little girl, I'm strongly in support of the initiative to decriminalize entheogenic plants and fungi. I think there's massive potential for benefits to our culture, to our town, to our society, in terms of medical benefits, as has been stated by a lot of those here, the work done at MAPS and Hefter that have explained how these can be really beneficial for people suffering from PTSD, anxiety, end of life, worries, things like that, but also spiritual benefits, even people that are otherwise healthy that are looking to better their lives. I just think that there's lots of benefits here. So thank you for consideration. I also support the addition of cultivation for personal adult use as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Aaron Newsome. I'm a United States Marine Corps combat veteran. I served in the Marine Corps from 2002 to 2008. When I got back from Afghanistan, I came back with some chronic pain issues and some post-traumatic stress issues. I found that cannabis really helped with alleviate a lot of the symptoms that I was facing with the pharmaceuticals that I was getting from the VA. When I got back, I helped found the Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance. We help with local veteran issues, specifically with safe access to medical cannabis, specifically as a means to move away from more dangerous pharmaceuticals. We're finding that cannabis is a great palliative care, the day-to-day use for reducing symptoms like anxiety and depression. But if we want to treat the root of mental health issues that we face in our community, then we desperately need access to these stronger plants and mushrooms. I want to emphasize that cultivation is the first step in creating opportunities for healing. To provide a path for safe access to these medicines is amongst the most important social services that you guys can provide. Thank you very much.
All right, and before you speak, the gentleman who's sitting right there with his hand up, you'll be our last speaker on this item. Okay?
Wonderful. Thank you for the extra time, and thank you for your leadership. Being the third city that'll vote this in, I'm confident that'll happen. I wanted to just recognize all the different ways that members of the audience here have spoken to the ways that these medicines have helped them, and also recognize that today, with the opioid crisis causing 133 deaths a day nationwide, with suicide up 30% from depression, and we can continue going through the list, what we're really talking about is a common source for all of these visible statistics and symptoms. And that common cause is suffering inside our subconscious and unconscious mind that our conscious mind intentionally keeps us away from. And what's happening with these extremely powerful products of the universe is a loosening of the mental knots that allow us to go back to those places with empathy and compassion for ourselves, and to heal, and to remember what we've always known, which we are all one.
So you'll be our last speaker on this item.
Good evening, I'm Scott Graham. There was a famous professor here at UCSC. He taught in the psychology department. on creativity. His name was Frank Barron. And he started out at Harvard in the early 60s and was part of the group of psychedelic activists there. And him and Tim Leary and Richard Alpert knew that there was something out there. They had been studying ancient civilizations, and they knew that there was these substances, but they hadn't found any of them yet. Frank and his wife went to Mexico on vacation, and he was able to locate a bruja that gave him some magic mushrooms. He after experiencing them, he sent a telegram to Tim and Richard and said, "Hey, I think we found what we're looking for."
I'm going to bring this item back for action and deliberation. Councilmember Glover.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to all the people that came out to speak tonight, all the letters that were written, and all the work that's gone into fine-tuning and making the resolution what it is today. So I am pleased to make a motion. I'd like to motion to adopt the red line version of the resolution in our packet with the reincorporation of the word cultivation into the title of the resolution to read individuals 21 years of age and older involved with the adult personal use and personal possession and personal cultivation of entheogenic psychoactive plants and so on. In addition, add the word cultivation into the first now therefore be it resolved to read solely for the personal use, personal possession, and cultivation, and so on. And also to direct staff to return in 6 months with a report and a safe use and prevention education strategy in collaboration with local organizations like Community Prevention Partners and the New Day organization.
Second.
I'd like to ask for a friendly amendment, which would be to address one of the whereas clauses. It says, whereas use of entheogenic plants and fungi can also be deleterious for individuals, and use requires harm reduction strategies and oversight by trained medical professionals for personal safety. I've heard from members of the public that, and just kind of reading through that, I think one of the things that we want to consider with that is the improper use or overconsumption. And so I'd like to amend that to say, whereas improper use or overconsumption of entheogenic plants and fungi can result in negative effects, use requires harm reduction strategies and education to ensure safe consumption practices. So,
accepted.
I have another proposed addition in the be it further resolved, which actually reflects one of the whereases, but I would suggest be it further resolved that the Santa Cruz City Council support further medical research on the short and long-term effects of the use of entheogenic plants and incorporate evolving scientific medical knowledge on the subject into city policy and practice.
Sorry, where is that?
It's an addition.
Oh, it's an addition.
Yeah. It kind of, it builds on the, I think the second whereas that talks about medical research. It just say we support further research on this topic.
Absolutely. I'm good with that.
The one thing I would push back on, I think that I know that we want our city staff to work with Santa Cruz Community Partners on educational resources. I would say to bring it back as soon as feasible. That way, if it can come before 6 months, or if there's other things that we're putting out that needs to come after 6 months, that we're, encouraging our staff to work with community partners on harm reduction strategies, but we're not having such a firm, fixed timeline.
I like that. The idea that it'll come back sooner than 6 months, and that'd be great. But at the same time, if I know staff is doing a lot of work on a lot of important issues, so if we can provide that flexibility, I think it's the responsible thing to do. So absolutely.
The language would be, if you could restate your motion, and then incorporate the language around rather than 6 months.
Yeah,
like when
so,
feasible.
and to direct staff to return at the earliest convenience with a report and a safe use and prevention education strategy in collaboration with local organizations and so on.
I mean, can you just, I mean, rather than the so
Local
on.
organizations like Community Prevention Partners and the New Day organization.
If I may. My understanding is the Community Prevention Partners has a federal grant in which they identify very specific items that they're working on in terms of their work plan, and I don't believe this is one of those items. So I do think we want to, before we put this on them, we want to consult with them in terms of what's feasible for their work plan, one. And two, I do want to just, if I may, I just really want to reiterate the importance of really acknowledging the youth impact. I was at and it was reported on recently, that a student was like, eager and excited about learning about the decriminalization of these substances, and that is not the message we want to send to our youth. So whether it be CPP or other strategies or means that we're going to go about looking at social norming campaigns and really reiterating to our youth, this is not a message to them to start using. This is acknowledging the folks that I felt were very vulnerable and sharing their stories around some of the healing benefits. This is not for our kids. And I whatever that looks like as it relates to our relationship with city schools and monitoring use and acceptance of use, or working with the university in the same regard, as well as the impacts that it has with our law enforcement, that we're really proactively looking at social norming for our youth to ensure that this is not impacting their acceptance and use of it, as well as the safe storage and lockup of it so that our youth can't access it otherwise if there's an adult in their house that may be accessing it. So I can put that into some form of a recommendation, but just really want to strongly make that point at this moment.
Councilmember Matthews, and then I'm going to put myself
And building on that, I think the language that's been given to us is that staff come back with a plan, and the language implied that we would then carry out that education plan, whereas we have community partners who really do, that's what they do. So I think that's the direction you're going, would be to support the efforts of community partners for education and harm reduction. So I think that's what you're saying. Let the people who do it, do it.
Well, I'll just, if I could clarify,
please
if I
go.
may. Well, the Community Prevention Partners is actually they're a collaborative that's federally funded, is my understanding, and it's run out of, I believe it's run out of the United Way, but I don't know for sure. And they have very specific things that they're working on their work plan: opioid, cannabis, alcohol access for youth. So before we have them create a plan for us, I think we want to consult with them in regards to what they can inform us. But I don't think that this is in their work plan. So I just want to be clear about before we put this expectation on them. That aside, I want to just sort of reiterate that we do need to have an education plan. We need to work with our education partners, and this could be in the form of a friendly amendment if that makes the most sense, and consult with city schools and the university in terms of acceptance and use rates, and then also return back with a plan around how we're preventing it getting into the hands of youth, but also looking at social norming campaigns as well as safe storage for those that may be consuming it as adults in the household.
Can I just respond to that really quick?
Sure.
Yeah, so that's, I think, intentionally why I included the kind of broad category of collaborations with local organizations, because that provides for that wiggle room. And if Community Prevention Partners is available and able to participate in whatever role based on the work plan, then that's great. Otherwise, I'm sure that through our connections with as a city, as well as some of the people doing the work currently in the community, they can help work with us to create that use prevention and education strategy, because I think we can all agree that we want to make sure that it's being done responsibly and by adults. So.
Okay. Councilmember Matthews, myself, Vice Mayor Myers, and then Councilmember Brown.
I just want to be realistic about what kind of a education prevention strategy we, the city, are going to carry out. So I think to say that we support efforts along these lines is probably more realistic. It's what we do on a whole lot of other health things. We don't conduct them, we support them.
Can I just respond to that?
Sure.
Absolutely. I don't think in here or in the motion it even insinuates that the city would be the one doing it. It's to come back with a report on the partnership and or the collaboration that was done with the community partners in creating the prevention and education strategy. There's nothing in here about the city enacting that education plan. So,
I mean, I'm
Please
next
help.
on stack,
Yes.
and I'll speak to that. By using the language of collaborate with these organizations within the community, you are stating that the city will be working with those organizations. I think what our colleagues are saying is that if the city is stating that they are supporting the efforts of organizations in our community, they're trying to work towards education and prevention. And I'd also say, removing any name of any group, that the city will support the work of education and other preventative measures with organizations in the community. You're actually making it more broad, and also it's not putting any work on our staff to come up with those educational resources. What it's saying is that we as a city are supporting all types of education to potentially, to sum it up, keep this out of the hands of children and to educate our population on safe practices.
share some friendly amendment language with me. How do you want to, I'm totally happy. I love it. So how do we want to phrase it?
I think the phrasing would be, first part of it is adoption with the amendments, and
to support
and support organizations who are working on harm reduction,
safe use and prevention education.
safe use and prevention in the city of Santa Cruz.
Sounds good. Seconder? On board. All right, cool.
Are you able to capture that at all? No. I think I can probably write this down.
Yeah, I mean, to read.
Vice Mayor Myers, Councilmember Brown, and then Councilmember Watkins.
Yeah, I just want to, if possible, I know we have a communications consultant. I mean, I know that I was contacted by a number of parents, so I think this understanding of what we're doing tonight is really important for parents and folks who are trying to understand kind of what this means for the community. So I would request, not as part of the motion, I don't think I need it as part of the motion, but could we please actually do a press release describing what this is exactly, and make sure that gets widely distributed to all Bay Area and national newspapers. And also, if we can, just please somehow put this up on our website in a way that parents have easy access to really understand what exactly this is. Because I talked to both parents and I've talked to physicians, and many people just want to understand what we're doing, and there is just a need to understand what this means for the youth in the community. So if we could, make an effort to really make this very clear to folks when they look on our website what it is we're doing, and do that outreach through communications. Thanks.
Councilmember Brown.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment, thanking members of the community who have come out for all of the work you've done, and bringing us the information that we need to make this kind of decision. I think the evidence is clear. I'm looking forward to seeing evolving research results, because I think it's only going to confirm and amplify the what we've already seen in the data, and personal experiences, as described by some folks here in the room very eloquently. I'm very happy to be including cultivation back into this, because for some of the reasons, for the reasons that were raised by members of the public, I think that when we talk about self-determination and access, it's critical that people have the ability to grow their plants and not rely on outside, dealers, or much less, bioprospecting that goes on for the pharmaceutical industry. And so I'm really pleased to be doing this tonight.
Okay, Councilmember Watkins, and then I have a comment as well.
I just want to maybe see if it could be accepted as a friendly amendment or added to the further direction that we work with the UC partners as well as the city schools partners to monitor impact and perceptions of use as acceptable, as well as use rates, for youth who are under the age of 21 using. So we want to see, as we make this decision, if there is a change in youth acceptance and use as a result of this change or not, but looking at the data. We could work with our community, our education partners to do so.
Like to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would ask if they're currently collecting that data.
Yeah, you could collect the data through the Healthy Kids survey for locally, or in some sort of informal type of survey, or anecdotally, and probably similar with the university, I'd say. But you want to have I mean, you do collect we do collect youth substance abuse use and acceptance rates, but we want to make sure that we're in communication with them moving forward if there's an impact one way or another.
I just want to make sure it doesn't disproportionately skew the data if we start tracking it more intensively than we have in the past, which then could make the numbers disproportionate. So, you know, as long as it's already going on and it's just getting a report back on any perceived changes based off of the already existing reporting, then that makes sense. But if you're trying to add additional tracking, which could offset the numbers, then you could have unreliable data.
I guess I would say, I think we just want to work with our community partners who work with youth on an ongoing basis to see if they're experiencing an impact of the decision. And that could be with a new question that they may ask if it's not already being collected, and or anecdotally. And I don't know if it necessarily means that we're trying to pry for it, but we want to make sure that we're consulting them in the impact that they might be seeing in the schools as a result of the decision.
Member Matthews.
I don't think it was an official.
It was a bit vague. Yeah. And when you say we, I don't think you mean we, the city council. We don't collect data on youth substance abuse. There are various health surveys that do, et cetera. So I'm trying to think of actual language. Be it further resolved that the city welcome information from community health partners on.
And educators.
And educators on use, youth exposure and use of ethnogenic. I mean, is that what you're going for?
Yeah.
And attitudes
toward. Yeah, exposure, use, and attitudes about use of ethnogenic substances. And those kinds of surveys are regularly conducted on young people in the community by external agencies. And so that it would just be it further resolved, the city welcomes information from health and education partners.
Sure, I'm a big fan of data, but go ahead. Sorry, Mayor.
I would just like to say that one of the good things about that is that there's a lot of stigma around people who use different types of drugs or these substances, plant substances, and so understanding if there's a shift in mentality from people thinking about this as something that's for party situations or recreational, and then youth understanding that this is not something that this is something serious that's used to treat illnesses. I think that there is a benefit of, as we're trying to restructure the narrative around these types of substances that for very long have been used to kind of demonize people who use them, and also there's been a culture around them of lack of respect and more recreational use, that if we can get the narrative to shift towards what I think many people in this room want, which is for these substances to be used to treat serious illnesses and serious emotional, I don't want to say diseases, but traumatic experiences, what have you, that I think that it's good that we have this information. And I also think that it might help us as we move forward understand how we can change the narrative around what these types of plants and fungi are used for.
Yeah, I can get down with that. Accepted. Seconder.
Excellent. I also wanted to make one comment briefly on the cultivation aspect, and one of the reasons why I'm very much in support of adding that back in is because with possession and use being inserted without cultivation, that actually encourages the black market, because there's nowhere else to get it except from the black market. Additionally, I think that one of the other aspects that comes along with it is that people know exactly what they're taking, and so they don't have to worry about anything potentially being laced. Is it real? Is it fake? If people are cultivating it themselves, they know exactly what they're producing, they know exactly what they're taking, and so I think that that's really important as people are understanding what they're getting themselves into. as we know with cannabis, there's different strands, and those different strands have different kinds of effects. If people are able to cultivate what they know has the appropriate effects on themselves, then they can create a situation where they might not go buy something on the street from someone, and then it actually has a negative impact on them. So that's one of the reasons why I'm also encouraging that we incorporate cultivation back in, because not only does it reduce the potential for more black market, but it also is, in fact, a way to reduce harm on oneself. So I just want to put that out there. So I guess I'd like to bring it back to see if there's any further questions or comments by council members on this item.
I just make a comment on the change, the cultivation change. In looking at some of the other wording in the other two ordinances, both of those sort of used personal use and possession, with that referring to cultivation. So it was not an intention to try to get cultivation out of the language. It's just that personal use and possession was defined in some of the other ordinances to include cultivation. So I just want to clarify that. It wasn't an attempt to try to take that out, but it's just what happened.
I'll also add that I also, when I was reading over it, was interpreting that possession could also be cultivation, but I wasn't sure, and so just to clarify. But thank you. Councilmember Crone.
Thank you. The only thing I want to say is that, you all have been a model of planting a political seed, and you first approached the city council, and then you went and did your research, then you went through the public safety committee, then you came back to the council. I just want to applaud all of you for just sticking this out and going through a process, and like listening to your stories is incredibly moving. It's just like, wow. And I think the council gets it, and I think some of the things that we're doing up here is just making sure that our community is going to embrace this, and I think you've helped that a lot by setting that path. So thank you very much.
Okay. If there aren't any further comments, I'm hoping that we can kind of like to go over what the motion was, if possible. So the motion is to adopt the resolution declaring that the investigation and arrest of individuals 21 years of age and older involved with the adult personal use and personal possession and cultivation of ethnogenic plants and fungi listed on the Federal Schedule 1 list be amongst the lowest priorities for the city of Santa Cruz. There were amendments to add back in cultivation. There was language, an amendment added in around the improper use or consumption of ethnogenic plants and fungi that can result in negative effects, and the use requires harm reduction strategies and education to ensure safe consumption practices. And there were also amendments to support harm reduction and prevention amongst youth in Santa Cruz and work with UC and education partners for monitoring impacts amongst youth. Then there was an additional be it resolved.
Well, I had a couple. One kind of tacks on it. I had one supporting additional medical research, and when I can give the language to Bonnie, and another that we welcome information from community health and education partners, et cetera. I have that language as well.
Okay, and that motion was
to clarify, in the motion, it was a report back in 6 months, but it was changed to when feasible, right?
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Correct. That motion was made by Councilmember Glover, seconded by Councilmember Brown. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. All right. We're going to take a minute to, for those of you who wish to stay for our last item, you're more than happy to stay. We're going to take about 3 minutes to allow the chambers